What is up, my friends, and how's it going? Welcome to the second episode of the Tactical Guide series with your fellow comrade Summary. In the previous episode, we had discussed in depth about unit stats and analyzing the roles and purposes each unit fulfills on the battlefield. In this second episode, we will be using that information in order to create our army composition. As you can see here, I am going to fight as the Mauryans against the Atropatene Khan, as the Mauryans are surrounded by Persian factions in the early game that share the same unit roster with the Atropatene Khan. One thing you will notice is that the Atropatene Khan in the early game, or the Persian factions in the early game, do not typically go for their cavalry general and instead has this spear archer unit. Meanwhile, from my experience, the AI typically gets about 3 cavalry units, 4 missile units, 2 extremely heavy spearmen at 35 armor, as well as some 5 Sparabara, which is a pretty versatile unit. They do have decent melee stats, decent armor at 15, and also have 4 missiles, which they fire from their bows and arrows, so they're pretty much an archer and a spear unit. And lastly, we have 5 melee infantry, basically Persian axemen. So straight up the bat, we kind of understand the army composition that the Atropatene Khan have gone for. And in the early game, we can select the Rajanya Varu general, so we're going to go ahead and put him in there. However, we do not have access to extremely elite units, as most of our early game units, as you can see over here, have extremely low armor. Among our spearmen options, we just have these 2 options in the early game, and once again you can see that the armor is only at 1 for both units, so not really a good option to take this spear unit and try to make them fight against this spear unit over here, or even worse, this spear unit. The Persian apple bearers are absolutely going to destroy our spear units. So our spear units are more defensively oriented. As you can see, they do have greater melee defense than melee attack. However, when we look at our melee infantry, things seem to be inverse, and most of our melee options have higher melee attack as opposed to melee defense. Lastly, we can go ahead and hire this archer unit over here. However, in custom battle, it is limited to 2 per army. So I'm just going to quickly select the Mauryan longbowmen, which won't be available from the start of the game. However, they are the closest representation to this unit over here at 200 men. So quickly go ahead and select 5 archers. Now the reason why I selected 5 archers is I do want supremacy with missiles, and they have 4 archers, respectable at 200 men per unit. So I am going to get 5 so that I can pretty much counter their archers. Right. Now in terms of cavalry, they do have respectable cavalry with 23 armor and good melee attack and defense. They are medium tier, or medium cavalry rather. So what we want to do is we will only have the availability of this cavalry, the Mauryan cavalry, and as you can see, their armor is fairly inferior and their melee stats are also inferior. So in this situation, what you want to do typically is fight asymmetrically. You don't want to play in the same fashion as they are, and you pretty much want to fight out an asymmetric battle where you are denying the opponent its strengths and denying them from exploiting your own weaknesses. So we're going to go ahead and select 4 cavalry units. However, the counter to cavalry units are elephant units. So we are going to select 2 elephant units, the cheaper option that we do not have. And with that, we have pretty much covered their cavalry units and their missile units. So next we are going to look at their infantry units. Typically when setting up an army, I do recommend going for 10 melee units. However, we only have 8 slots left. I would recommend not dropping below 9. So I am actually going to go ahead and delete one of my archer units. For the melee infantry, I could pick spearmen that has, you know, respectable melee defense, so they should last long. However, I am not going to win that engagement against these guys, so no matter how long the engagement goes for, I am going to lose out, as these guys have better armor and better melee stats overall. So again, once again, you're not going to try to engage them in their own game. Instead, you are going to deny them the advantage. And the way to do that is to actually go for what they have over here, which is armor. So you're going to select the unit with the best armor penetration that you have available to you in the early game. And as you can see, this unit over here does have an armor penetration of 16. However, its melee attack is quite low. And this unit over here has lower armor penetration, does have a bonus versus infantry, does also have 8 armor of its own, as well as greater melee attack at 15. Yeah, I already mentioned that, sorry. So we're going to go ahead and select these units for our main battle line. However, these units do not have shields, which means enemy archers can pretty much melt these units away. So we kind of have to counter that. So the only way we can do that is actually employ 2 of these spearmen over here, Morian spearmen, in order to soak up that missile damage. And pretty much they have the large shield in game. Oh, I'm sorry, it just appears in the unit card. They do have a shield value of 4. That should give them about 50% chance to block missile attacks. However, in comparison to this unit, the Morian Axemen, that chance is reduced to 15%, right? So definitely these guys are much better at soaking up that enemy missile damage. So with this, we are ready to hop into the battle. And I will show you how to basically set up your army in order to fight asymmetrically with this army, which you can tell is fairly superior in comparison to our own army. We want our cavalry on the right and left flank. Quickly select our frontline units, our spear units, and the cavalry on the left and right flanks as well. So one way you can quickly deploy your army is by giving them groups like so. And then just select a group and right click on the battle map. And as you can see, they are already deployed in their default unit width. Right behind these units, we want to place our archers. We're actually going to bring these units slightly behind. We're going to put our archers ahead, toggle on that guard mode, get our spear units in the front, and in this case we want to stretch them out. And the reason I'm doing this is because spear units kind of have shields, so they will be better equipped to deal with missile damage. And the entire objective is that once I get within missile range, the enemy missile units will start to attack our shield units and will pretty much ignore the units that don't have a shield value, right? So that is quite important. Meanwhile, on the left flank, we are going to position our elephants as well as our cavalry. And for the cavalry, we are actually going to toggle off fire at will and toggle on melee mode. The objective of what's going to happen on the flank is that the elephants are going to charge at the cavalry unit. And then we are going to follow it up with our own cavalry charge in order to minimize the damage taken by our low armored cavalry. So once again, you can see we are fighting asymmetrically. They have... Let's go ahead and start the battle and I'll explain it to you while my army marches. So quickly drag click the whole army using the left mouse button. Hold down the control key to make sure they march slowly. Alright. So let's have a quick look at the enemy units. You can see they have their light Sparbara on the flank. These light melee units, which aren't much of a threat to us. Sparbara over there. Their cavalry is somewhere in the middle. And we're looking at the heavy spear infantry right in the middle, the Persian apple bearers. Now these guys are the most dangerous units that they have. And we will have to keep an eye out for that, right? And of course they have their archers in the front. So the whole point of this is to kind of deny them from fighting an equal battle, because one-on-one we're not going to win against them, especially against their melee infantry, because they have better stats than our spearmen. So instead of getting an entire line of spearmen, right, we are just going to get 2 of these to kind of soak up the damage their archers deal to them, right? And then we are going to use our own archers, which is in the second line, to target their archers, slowly killing them, right? And when the battle progresses on to the next phase, we are going to charge up our infantry axemen. So we are going to lock them up into formation so that we can quickly charge the enemy, and they will kind of auto select the nearest unit to attack. Okay. Meanwhile, on the flank, our elephants and cavalry on either flanks, as the flanks are always symmetrical in nature, minus the addition of the general on the right flank, we are going to try to gain a supremacy and destroy the enemy on the right and left flanks, after which our elephants can flank the enemy and hit them in the rear. And since in that early phase we don't really need javelins, we really need our cavalry to help our elephants deal with the enemy units in melee. That's why I have toggled off the fire at will and set them to melee mode. However, once we have secured the flanks, the cavalry can engage in its own flanking maneuvers in and behind the enemy, and this is the phase in which I will be turning on the fire at will. Let's just go ahead and quickly fast forward the battle here, and once I get in range, that is when I am going to slow down the battle. And it seems like I might get in range here, which will trigger the battle. Okay, so here we are in range. We're gonna quickly, the first thing we want to do is make sure our archers are hitting their archers. And we're done with that. Meanwhile, we want to move our elephants closer, because their cavalry will kind of charge at our spear units. And our spear units kind of act like a screen to prevent the enemy from like charging into our archers. So meanwhile, on the right flank, you can see that they do have a melee infantry, which will not pose much of a difficulty to our own elephants, so we are going to engage them over there. Our spearmen have taken a bit of casualties, but as you can see in the bottom, it's only our spearmen who are taking the missile fire, as well as this elephant unit over here. So I am going to move this elephant unit slightly behind. Meanwhile, here on the right flank, our troops are in position, so we are going to charge them in. So it seems like we will be gaining the advantage on that right flank. Right. Now once you charge, you can hit that unit and hit the J key. He will move back. Meanwhile, I am going to select my general, charge again, and hit that J key for him to move back. I can use my cavalry on the flank as well to do the same thing. And one thing that this does, it causes a lot of charge damage, and it also prevents your troops from being locked down in melee combat over there. Now that our archers are kind of done, the very next thing we want to do is kind of deal with their cavalry, because the cavalry is being a bit annoying on the flanks. So we are going to kind of focus fire on their cavalry units. Meanwhile, our cavalry over here can pull behind. We have routed that one unit. And now, over here, we are going to charge in our elephants to stop the charge of the cavalry and follow it up with our own cavalry charge like this. What this does is our elephants don't take any damage, and also our cavalry will not take any damage from the enemy charge, because the elephants pretty much stop the cavalry in its tracks. And over here, we are going to redirect our archers as well. Meanwhile, over here on the left flanks, things are not looking good. So I am going to try to kind of maneuver my way around, get into a better position. I can double click one to see quickly what's happening on the right flank, because one is my general unit. Quickly pull out my general as well as my elephants. And now that my units are pretty much done over here, can go ahead and toggle the fire at will on, turn off melee, and engage skirmish mode and try to attack those units. Meanwhile, I do notice an archer unit over here in the back. I am going to use my generals to deal with them. And over here, this unit seems to be attacking my elephant unit. So what I can do is, I really can't charge into them, but I can activate the toggle fire at will as well as the skirmish mode in order to kind of entice them, shoot them in the back. Quick double click 1 to see our general unit. Get our cavalry in behind. More melee units are coming up here. And this is pretty much where we can begin the second phase of the battle almost. Our archers are done. So what we are going to do is pull our archers behind. They are no longer of use. And we're going to charge our swordsmen up there. Our axemen. So, alright. Meanwhile, over here, our elephants have gotten bogged down, so we are going to quickly move them. It is a cavalry unit, so quickly move these guys out. Toggle on. Just see what's going on here. This unit is nearly catching up to our elephant unit. And over here, our skirmishers can shoot these guys in the back. And so, since this is a swords unit, charging with the cavalry is fairly easy. So we are going to go ahead and do that. Meanwhile, select our other melee troops to kind of engage the entire enemy front line. And as you can tell, quickly going to stop these two units so that this cavalry charge doesn't go off against our own melee troops. And we're going to charge our general back into that unit. Over here, our elephants did get bogged down. I didn't micro them that well. However, over here, things are looking good. That left flank is looking bad, so I am going to commit to that left flank. Right? And here, I can go ahead and pretty much lock down every other unit. Quickly move these guys over here. Get our cavalry to charge once again. And move up this cavalry. Meanwhile, this infantry unit is free, so I do want him to support that. This cavalry can come in and try to hit that archer unit over there. Our general is taking a bit of losses, however, I do want to charge up with my cavalry units and kind of try to deal with that unit. Alright. Now a quick look. The medium spearmen, one of them is over here. And the other one is all the way in the back. So as you can see, their best unit hasn't even engaged us yet, which is kind of great. Get our elephant units in and behind. We are facing a bit of a situation here, so we do want to quickly resolve that. Move our cavalry behind. They can start firing in the backs. Get our general and other elephant out of there. And they can go ahead and charge this unit in the back.
Our men flee the field of battle.
Now, over here we are doing well, so I kind of want to move my infantry in and around. And this is not looking good here, so we are going to force that elephant to kind of ignore over there. Right. The cavalry on the left flank is done well, so they are going to go ahead and hunt down that unit. Meanwhile, we are going to move all of our melee troops to kind of support that left half of the battlefield. We get these two out here. And we are nearly done with this, and their main spear unit, the apple bearers, is going to take some time to reach us, so we are going to move this out, and our elephants can charge back into here. Meanwhile, get a general out of the way, quickly charge with these melee troops. Get these elephants also out of the way. These horsemen can go ahead, attack over there. As you can see, these swordsmen are free, so we are going to charge them in. Great. Get our elephants into this direction and charge at the back of these units. Meanwhile, get a general around. I didn't really micro the general all that well in this battle, but you are getting an idea that we are in the process of defeating a significantly superior army. Now, as you can see, this guy should be a high threat. We are going to charge into his back, and that should change things for us. And with that, you can see we have won the battle. Alright. You can see it's a decisive victory. We hardly lost any units. 688. It is more than what we typically would have lost against, you know, if we had better elite tier units. However, if you look at the kind of units we had, and just by understanding how important stats are and how to counter several units, we can pretty much build a composition that is a counter. And as you can see, our archers came in clutch. We performed better than any of their archers. Our cavalry performed better than any of their cavalry because we countered their cavalry. The only units that I did mention would be a concern were the general and the apple bearers, and as you can see, they have gotten the highest kills among the entire army. Meanwhile, if you look at their Sparabara, it's, except with the exception of this one unit, they're pretty much not done as well as our units over here. As you can see, 206 with this guy, 115, 96, 150, 130. So as you can see, we have fairly dealt with the enemy by countering it. If we kind of stacked up spear units, we would have lost severely. Meanwhile, our spear units didn't take any of casualties as much, except for this one, which did engage in melee towards the end of the battle. But for the most part, in the beginning of the battle, we didn't take a lot of casualties. This unit over here did get charged by 2 cavalry units, and that's pretty much all the kills the cavalry got. However, as you can see, they acted really great as a screen against the enemy missile troops, which didn't get a lot of kills and were pretty much dispatched by my own archers. So as you can see, this is how asymmetric battle works. Kinda don't play the enemy at its game. You kind of force it towards your situation and try to fight the battle on your terms rather than on their terms. Alright, with that, I am going to go ahead and end the video. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and if you liked the video, please like the video. And don't forget to subscribe if you are interested for more. Peace and love.